Hello traders and welcome back to my YouTube channel IPDATrader. Now in today's video what we're going to be doing is essentially going over my entire thought process when it comes to doing analysis, right? We're going to be opening a brand new chart and yeah, we're going to be simply working through the structure, liquidity, POI analysis, things of that nature so that you have an idea of what I try and do on a daily basis when it comes to understanding where I am in the markets, so that everyone is able to sort of benefit from that, right? I've received plenty of messages asking for this in particular, so I think this will be a good idea and this will be helpful for everyone watching. So we're simply going to be opening a random pair. We're gonna be discussing a little bit of what's happening, what I'm seeing, where I would want to be involved in this market in particular, and what would be my expectations, right? So, with all that being said, if this sounds like something you want to learn today, make sure you stick through the entire video because once again, you're just gonna get what you just clicked for, right? We're gonna be going over my entire thought process when it comes to building a story, creating a narrative, understanding your structure, things of that nature. So with all that being said, guys, let's get started with today's video. So traders, let's actually get started with what we said we were gonna do. So what I'm gonna do now is actually open a random pair, right? I'm gonna go over here, I'm gonna pick a random pair. Once again, I have not looked at all these markets and sort of prepared the analysis and stuff. So we're gonna do that on the go, right? So I'm gonna simply scroll down and we're gonna say we're gonna stop over here. Okay, so this is GBP CAT. And once again, please understand that this is my process when looking at a pair. You don't have to copy exactly what I do. What I want you to understand is that trading is something that's individual. Just take pieces and bits that you think make sense to you and that you can benefit from. You don't have to copy my entire idea when it comes to mapping out potential analysis and trades, right? So what I usually like to do when it first comes to looking at a chart, obviously we're looking at the GBP against the Canadian dollar. So once again, you would want to know a little bit of what's happening with those countries, things of that nature. But we're going to be strictly focusing on the technical aspect of it right now. So what I would want to do now is probably hop into the weekly just to get some perspective, right? You can see some analysis in the past, probably something with a client, nothing too significant. And when I first look at something of this sort, we're looking at the weekly, and once again, I'm not worried about everything. Let's see if I can find my tool over here. Just give me a second. Should be over here. Once again, I'm not worried about what's happening over here to my left. This is weekly candles. Every single candle takes a week to print. And if I'm trying to trade today or this week or in the coming hours, I'm not too concerned about what I'm seeing to my very left at that point. So we're gonna focus on the recent price action, right? And we can all agree this market is actually in a bearish order flow delivery, right? I think we can all agree that, but for the most part, we're stuck in a range, right? So that's the first idea that I can sort of gauge from the weekly. We're gonna jump into the daily. Okay, this is what I see, something that's a little bit more interesting to me. Once again, I look at the current low, I look to my left, and I see where is this low coming from? Why are we getting bullish candles all of a sudden, right? These are questions you have to be answering as you go through your frames, as you go through your time frames, right? So I would say, hey, this over here is a relevant section for me. Now that I see that we've tapped kind of deeper into that, I can probably refine that, right? Things of that nature, we can do that. So let me see over here. So I see we're tapping the zone. That's great. I would then go ahead and zoom into a 4-hour time frame. And this is where I would actually do most of how I think the market is gonna play out at this point, right? So we're looking to the left and I'm seeing a tab over here and I'm wondering where is that coming from? So I look to my left and I see, okay, so look, we've tabbed a demand zone at this point, right? You can refine that to that region and you say, okay, cool, we've tapped that. Overall, we're pushing down over here. We have, once again, bearish delivery over here. And everything that I'm focused on at this point is trying to understand what is the most recent break that I'm going to be working with that makes the most sense to me. And for that, I'm actually gonna go back to the daily and see this the strength of this POI, right? Does it make sense for price to bounce over here? Does it not? Well, and I can very safely say that, hey, this low over here, which is this POI, actually never went ahead and broke structure, right? If this low over here would have come up here, would have taken structure to upside at this point, I would have said, I 100% agree with you. This point is relevant. We're probably going to move up, right? Not saying that we're going to make new all-time highs, but I would expect some sort of bullish pressure to be seen from these blocks over there. But since that never happened, and what you can actually see happen is that this low over here was actually responsible for this mitigation over here, which is now actually pushing in that direction. I would be more so drag towards thinking that this is likely to get taken out. Yes, this is likely to provide you a reaction, but I would look for that to happen and continue in that direction at that point. So that's great, right? Now we have that information. Now let's go back to our intraday time frame. Now let's look at a little bit of the structure, right? And I see, okay, so what I see over here very clearly and what I would actually want to work with is the following. And you can see I'm not going to complicate it with everything else that's happening to my left. I'm focused on the recent price action. What is the most probable scenario at this point? Okay, so I would say this. I would say, okay, so we've broken structure to the downside. I think we can all agree that that has occurred at this point. And so we can label that. We say break of structure to the downside. This actually, once again, mitigated this previous block, which you can label and say this is a last point of true mitigation, which is absolutely correct and valid. This is a last point of true mitigation. So we had we have inefficiencies here that sort of filled a little bit of this area over here. And now I'm asking myself, where do I want to sell or do I want to buy? And for the most part, what I would say over here, due to the recent price action and what the market is currently telling me, I would want to actually sell over here, right? This entire region would be a high probability sell area for me. Once again, it doesn't mean it's going to hold. It just means that I'm going to be happy in looking at these specific price points to search and find some sort of confirmation that will allow me then to take positions. But for the most part, once again, if we look to the left, we're still hitting that area. We can argue that, hey, swing low liquidity, right? And you can label that swing low liquidity has been grabbed into my block. That is something that's great. And that sort of gives me a clue, right? So now what I'm gonna do is zoom a little bit further. I'm just working through the different time frames to see more information. Great. What do we see? So we see multiple things. This is the block that I would be interested in selling. So now what I'm going to do is actually refine that area to specifics within the block. And as I told you in the previous video, this would be an interesting section because this is a breaker block with an imbalance to the right. And I would probably use this section over here because this is sort of the highs that took this liquidity high out, being the Asian high. And as you can see over here, same thing happened, right? Asian high out, Asian low taken. Asian high out, well, first Asian low, then Asian high taken. Great. And now we're tracking order flow, and we can probably do this. And now we say, okay, so order flow is continuously holding over here. So we can duplicate this and say, hey, order flow is holding bearish in this specific market. If it happens to go all the way up into these areas, I am going to be extremely happy looking for sell confirmation entries over here to take that all the way back down into the opposite end of the range. And the same thing goes for this opposite block on top and take that all the way down, right? So now what I've essentially done is I've given myself specific sell price points, right? So these are my sell areas. This is where I have to be focused and where I have to understand what's happening so that I can probably execute. Now, you look at this and you say to yourself, hey, this mitigation from the daily block was actually responsible for an internal break in order flow over here. Okay, and if you're confused with that, you might want to watch the market structure video posted in my channel, because that's probably gonna help you a lot when it comes to understanding structure, right? So for me, and the way that I view things, this is a valid internal break, right? Internal structure break. So now we have, once again, let's summarize what I'm seeing, and I'm seeing higher time frame bearish, daily block tapped, internal flow bullish. These are the things that these essentially is the information that I'm essentially working with, and that it's currently in the back of my head at this point, trying to back of my mind, trying to make sense, right? So since this actually went ahead and broke structure, I would have actually been happy to look for buys over here, right? Right at this block, probably below Asia low liquidity, and this would be an interesting area for me to buy. So great, look what I've done to myself. At this point, I've given myself a buy area as well, right? Because obviously, if we're gonna go up over here, we're gonna see some bullish movement, right? So now I'm gauging the liquidity story of my current liquidity pools, and I look and I watch and I try to understand, right? So I look at this and I say, hey, Asia high is over here, Asia low, 2 steps manipulation, great. In this day over here, Asia high taken already, probably aiming for the Asia low into this structure point, this breaker, this structure point, right? So I have multiple options over here. So what I would say most probably is that I would want to wait for this block actually, right? You could have potentially used this last candle and you would have been interested in that, but for me, I'm okay with missing potential moves. I probably would want to refine it below Asia low liquidity, because in my experience, liquidity pools do get taken out quite often. So that's going to be an interesting area for me to watch. Now, if this happens, right? If this sort of drops down, continues up, hits this block, drops deeper. The moment we trade below this low over here, and please listen to me, this is important. The moment we trade below this low, I'm happy looking for sells at this block and potentially the block that will form over here. Why? Because order flow delivery is confirmed to be bearish and is confirmed to have just set a new lower low in place. So, I would actually map that scenario in my head as well, right? I would label this and I would say, okay, if we break on, listen, if we break below this low, whatever POI forms, maybe over here and drops, maybe it drops right now, I'm gonna be happy in adding this area over here for me to actually look and monitor for sells. Why? Because I'm assuming now that this is the lower high. We do not have any interest getting above that, because if we had, we would have actually done that higher before breaking structure once again to the downside, and I would be happy with taking sells at that point. So great. As you can see, what we're doing over here is fairly straightforward, right? You get your different biases from looking at your different time frames. You try to understand the story. You label your recent high time frame break. You map out scenarios that make sense to you. You try to execute based on your comfort level. So please understand these different items very well. As you can see, I'm not complicating it. I'm not going over what's happening and what happened let's say over here, what happened January 12th. I'm working with what is given to me recently. This is very important, right? So once again, to summarize the different biases and the different areas I would want to execute on. Obviously, sells at these price points are very high probability, and I would be very happy with that. Buys over here are possible because it broke internal structure over here, but I would not expect it to run forever, right? It could come back up into this rejection area and drop. Further down, it could once again go maybe a little bit higher into this origin and drop, or it could potentially go all the way up and then drop. right? These are multiple scenarios. Once again, you don't want to put yourself in a position where you're trying to call tops and bottoms. You're just giving yourself multiple scenarios and you're going to execute based on if conditions, right? If this happens, then this is what I'm doing. If this does not happen, then I'm not doing X, Y, Z, right? You get the point. So um, just to summarize a little bit of what I tried to teach today and what you should have understood and learned, right? Let me quickly get some points out of the way, right? So first of all, don't put yourself in a position where you try to call tops and bottoms, right? Tops and bottoms. Map out multiple options and execute based on what the markets actually do. So once again, that's essentially understanding your if this happens, then I do this. If it does not happen, then I don't do that. Right? Very important. Follow your own ideas and approach. Execute on what is comfortable for you. And lastly, trading is not a science, right? You have to get that through your head. Trading is not something you will solve. Trading is ongoing. Trading is something that you vary every single day because that's what the market is. The market is not static. The market is dynamic. So you have to be comfortable with that. You have to be able to make that work, right? So don't go into the charts thinking that this is something that should always happen based on this. You don't know that. You just execute based on what's the probability of something happening next after something has occurred. And this is where you go once again and understand your if conditions, right? So if, as an example, just to summarize over here, if we break this low, then this is a valid sell area. If we don't, then I'm going to be looking for buys over here. If price comes all the way up here, I look for sells, right? If price does not go all the way up, I probably don't look for sells unless this low is broken. So please, understand these different items. They will help you tremendously when trying to do your own analysis. And yeah, you will feel so much more comfortable with what you're doing if you just focus on and stick to whatever is comfortable for you, whatever you can recognize, whatever you can execute on, right? So I really hope this video provided you some value and information. It really helped you put things in perspective when it comes to doing analysis, mapping out trades, understanding structure, liquidity, POIs, things of that nature. And yeah, that's gonna be everything for today, guys. So I really hope you enjoyed it. Please feel free to leave video suggestions. You can drop them in the comment sections. I will gladly be taking a look into that. And leave a like, comment, subscribe if you actually enjoyed. If you actually support what I do and you want to help with the YouTube algorithm, then feel free to do that. And yeah, with that being said, guys, we'll speak. I will see you guys very soon, and thank you for listening.